And we'll go to the bottom of the top section, which is actually the conclusion of what is discussed. What's being discussed here is the inyan from neshamah. Prior to that, we spoke about ilav olu. Ilav olu is much closer to our understanding than yesh me'ayin. Not going to repeat it, but we already went through this. Yesh me'ayin means that something that's created that has no prior source. Before it had been created, it didn't exist. And when it does get created, it is a creation that does not relate directly to its source. The source is called AYIN, non-entity relative to the yesh. And in discussing this, we come to the recognition that the way this yesh gets created, since there is not a presence of this yesh, there's no source for it. Therefore, it is not an automatic revelation, a flow. It had to be created intentionally. The ayin had to focus in and say, I want to make a yesh. And that brings out in the yesh a novel presence called ischachus. Something that cannot be traced back to its original state. Excuse me? Ischachus, novelty, new.
Oh,
Chodosh. And now we're going to go 3 lines from the bottom, where the Rebbe uses a moshel from our experience, worldly experience, and that, as we said many times, goes completely contrary to our own perception. But the Rebbe insists, and at the end of this, it goes back to the hazriko, the throwing of the rock. Throwing of rock to us seems to be a perfectly natural phenomenon. It does not need to create something new, something novel that does not exist as I'm looking at the rock. Yet the Rebbe says, no, there is something very, very novel in this. And we tried very hard to focus and to understand what the Rebbe is referring to. What's so novel about it? Even after the Rebbe finished with the moshel, he went into the nimshol, yesh v'yayin. He comes back to the moshel. Obviously, there's something very significant in it. In general, I just want to bring in the whole thing. And moshel is an extremely important aspect of learning Hasidus. Because otherwise you're learning Hasidus, you're learning in a different world, in a different reality. In order to translate it in our reality, you need a moshel. Let me introduce this principle itself. Rebbe created the world, a physical world. It's a new creation, it's conscious. But the creation that Rebbe created on a physical level is on a physical level reflective of the way things are l'mayla. The nefesh ha'odom is a reflection of the way the Yonim are in Elam Hatzilus. Nefesh ha'odom etzayim koiches chochem bina v'das because it's on Shfiras l'mayla. Yes, it's chachos, it's a new thing, but it's not new in terms of what it represents. It is new in terms of its madrega, of its level, at what stage it is. But in this stage it reflects the way the things are l'mayla. As we speak many times, again I'm going off a little bit, but I don't understand. You build a table. A table is built from pieces of wood and they're put together and it stands on its own. We said many times, the table is conceptualized. The table is a reflection of what a human being is. All the way up, a human being needs a table. To eat with self-respect, with dignity, you have to have a table. But can you say that the table is a reflection, is a revelation the way it is in Nefesh, not far from it? You go down to a physical level and you evaluate the physical level, how you're going to eat. But there, ultimately, you create an entity that is reflective of human dignity. So it is not incorrect to say that it is rooted in the Nefesh Ha'odom, but not that this is a revelation the way it is in Nefesh Ha'odom. With our seichel, when we think of our world, we automatically reflect the way the Nefesh, the way it is in the Nefesh. So coming back to the moshel of koyach hazriko. Koyach hazriko is a koyach, a physical koyach. It is not a direct revelation the way things are in the world. Yet, it is not a direct flow from that, but it definitely reflects it. And this is why we have the moshel of koyach hazriko. Because the moshel of koyach hazriko, it reflects the way the Yonim are on a higher level. This is why it is incumbent upon us, even though they said koyach hazriko, we don't understand what you're talking about. Zriko is a simple thing. But the Rebbe insists, no, that if you focus in and understand koyach hazriko, you will see something completely different than the way you perceive it.
To remain on this call, press 1.
In first step, the Rebbe insists, says, Zriko is something totally novel as far as the soul is concerned. There is not a beginning, is not a basis in the stone for this flight. Where is the basis for the flight come from? The koyach of movement in the hand. We'll discuss it, but I'm saying this is what the Rebbe is focused on, and insists, and comes back to it. So since this is not completely new to us, we already discussed it, I want to reintroduce that which we already discussed. I'd like that we should understand the following principle. This is the physical world. In the physical world, the stone does not fly. Why is that true that the stone does not fly? We would say it has no beginnings of it. It's a doimim, and it's a plain stone. It can't fly. Doesn't have the phenomenon of movement. In other words, it cannot fly because it's lacking everything that has to do with flight. There's nothing reflected in the stone. There's not lack of flight. On the contrary, it's reflecting the stone it has no capability, lack of capability of movement. It's a net negative, so to speak. So the Rebbe invites us to think with him, so to speak. Please understand, this is not so. Why not so? Because the stone does not evolve on its own within the world of context. The stone is a godly creation. If it's a godly creation, it means that it was created the way God wanted it. And if the stone cannot fly, it's because that's the way God wanted it. There's a, so to speak, a definitive phenomenon there. In this simple stone that cannot fly, there was a whole plan, perception, a divine perception. And this divine perception was formulated when it was still an AYIN, when it's still at the godly level. And in the godly level, he already projected, I want to have a yesh, this is slapshus. I want to have a yesh, the stone that will not fly. I want it to be a real yesh, a worldly yesh. So even though it's a yesh may ayin, which means it's two different ayin and yesh, this ayin, the plan for the yesh is reflected in the yesh. The plan for the yesh is that the yesh should not fly on its own. But
the plan for the yesh is reflected in the yesh?
Yeah. The plan for the yesh should not fly. But it is not just a plain dumb yesh, so to speak. It's a yesh me'ayin, which means yes, it does not fly, but you can make it fly. You can reflect the ayin in the yesh. If the yesh were simply, please follow this and see if this reverberates. If the yesh was simply a yesh without an ayin source for it, then you would not be able to pick stone off the ground.
Why not?
Sorry?
Why not?
Because that's all it is. That's where it belongs.
So we just established it was made to belong on the ground.
Yeah, to belong on the ground, but it has a plan in it. It's a yesh mei ayin. There's an ayin as its background.
So wait, so if I disturb its nature of lying on the ground, that indicates the ayin? Why?
It indicates that it is there with a plan. It is not there because that's all it has.
Oh, so if I pick it up, that's indicating the plan already.
That's right.
Oh.
When you pick it up, it's because the ayin, because it allows you to pick it up. Now the stone is, yes, belongs on the ground, but it has its versatility. It can be picked up.
And that indicates ayin because
It's ayin.
it's more, why? Because
It's
it has
not.
more
It's not
features.
limited. It's not limited to yesh.
It's not limited to it's not locked into its yeshus. It
That's
can
right.
go into other
That's
modes,
right.
yeah?
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
Just as you learn something and you understand it, and somebody asks you a kasha, and you find an answer. How do you find an answer? You have a kasha. The answer is you go for the answer in the ayin of your concept. You go higher and deeper to the source of this concept, and then you find an answer. If the concept were, if you were limited just to what you said, kasha remains a kasha, period.
Is that why we brought up the idea of kihu tziva v'nivro, shem havaya?
I don't know where you're going.
That the shem havaya is the idea of the versatility, the ayin, which allows for more than elikim?
We're saying in elikim it's yesh mayayin. Shem havaya is a completely different thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I said we should try to stick to what we're learning. So then the Rebbe brings it back and says, yes, we have a physical world, defined and limited by physicality. But this physicality is a reflection of a divine plan. This physicality comes from a divine level. Therefore, it is a moshel for that which is divine. Except you have to find that moshel. You have to remember this physical entity is a divine creation. And as such, it is reflective of the fact that it's a divine creation.
Why is it a muscle if it's reflective?
One second. It's a reflective of the fact that creation. And the fact that you can pick up a stone shows that it is not one thing with the earth. It was put there. And you can pick it up the earth. Because it can relate to the source of the whole creation. It's not limited to what you see. Although that's where it belongs. So that if you do throw it out, it'll come back to where it belongs. Do I have you with me?
The versatility is put in the stone. That's an inherent reflection of the ayin. Or
that's
that,
right.
Or
it's
that
a reflection of its source, ayin. It's a reflection that the stone was not born on the earth. Because if it's born on the earth, you wouldn't be able to detach it from the earth.
So we call it reflection of muscle.
Sagst du?
Why do we call it reflection of muscle?
A moshel is the same idea of a higher level, how you find it on the lower level. That's a moshel. And it is challenging to find an idea in a physical entity. A stone is a stone. And Rebbe says, no, I want you to think with me, and you see that there is an idea in this stone. And the fact that you can pick it up and throw it, that's a whole phenomenon. It's reflected by the fact that it was a creation.
And that's not part of the plan?
What?
Is that not part of the plan?
What's not part of the
The
plan?
versatility.
Versatility is part of the plan.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, one question.
Nice.
We just developed the mashal of koyach hazrika, which is the act of a man picking up a stone and throwing it.
Mm-hmm.
Are we in the same realm when we speak of a stone that is being moved in an earthquake or in a volcano eruption, where there's no human intervention? It's directly Hashem throwing stones in the air. Is it the same?
It's not the same, obviously.
No, I know, but
Okay. But clearly, all detailed identification in the world was identified as in detail. We have a mountain, we have a valley. A mountain was created as a mountain. The earth is very versatile, very rich in all kinds of different variations. But the Rebbe said, let it be plant. How many different plants were created in this? Uncountable. And each one fulfills the requirement, the definition of our plant. How many different human beings came from Adam Rishon? It's one of the great miracles of creation. From one entity we created millions of different human beings. And they're all rooted in the same neshamah. So we can go and infer with this, but
I just have in mind that the idea of yesh me'ayin is much stronger.
if I drank away, I don't remember.
I don't think.
Huh? No, Baruch atah
We're trying to illustrate the idea of yesh me'ayin. I have a feeling that the stone falling down from the mountain by Hashem's earthquake action is a much higher level. It's like direct Hashem's intervention as opposed to. Or is it?
What's the difference?
Okay,
I'm not going
if you
there.
say
I'm not
there's
going
no
there.
difference,
It's
fine.
not. We have enough challenge to understand the words that the Rebbe does say. That's why, yes, we should not go into our own projections. So now we have the challenge of Koyach HaZrika. Koyach HaZrika is a real challenge because we experience it all the time. We think we know everything about it. So let's go 4 lines from the bottom. Ukmoike.
Just one thing is the Evan means dafka Evan or anything is like a Evan. Any gashmis the gezah.
Any gashmi is the thing that belongs on the earth. The tree doesn't belong in the earth. It grows from it, but it's a separate entity. The Evan is part of the earth. The similar union is the union Hazrika. What is the similar union? Because we came to the understanding that yesh me'ayin, there is what's called his chatshus. His chatshus, something novel, something that cannot be traced back to a source. And this his chatshus demands, in order to create his chatshus, that there should be a his labshus, an intent in this result. Because if it's not intended, it will not materialize on its own, because there is no source for it. So these two principles, his chatshus and his labshus, that is the means by which it comes, is true also being Hazrika. In the principle of Zrika of the throw. This is where it's challenging to us, because we think we know what Zrika is, and we see it the way we see it from the worldly perspective. And the Rebbe wants that we should understand what Kirch HaZrika is from his perspective. So the Rebbe explains. In HaZrika we have both of these inyonim, his lapshus and his chatshus. Shekoyach hatnuah shebiyad. What the koyach hatnuah means the koyach of movement that is in the hand. The hand has the koyach hatnuah. This koyach hatnuah who bihislapshus boho'eben lifil bei. Is actually imbued mislabish in the stone. It is given to the stone, lifel boy. It is put down into the stone, lifel boy, to affect the stone. Rak shehu behel. Except only that this koyach hatnua that is mislabish in the stone is behel. What you see is the flying stone. You don't see the koyach hatnua that moves it. It is behel. As far as you're concerned, the stone is flying on its own. As it is interpreted, so to speak, in our world, you initiate the stone's flight and it flies. There's no reason for it not to fly. So the Rebbe says, please follow me. The reason it flies is because the koyach hatnua shebiyad is b'yislapshus b'ho'evan. It's a koyach hatnua that gives the whole phenomenon of flight. Identifies flight with the stone. And therefore this is b'yislapshus b'ho'evan. What's mean b'yislapshus? It is with focus. When I pick up a stone, I know that I have something in my hand and that this thing will not fly on its own and I want to make it fly. And I take my koyach hatnua, and I say to hatnua, make this stone fly. Just as you move, give your movement ability into the stone. Which means it's slapshus. And that is lapsus heaven that gets imbued, gets related to the stone. Rakshu behel. Except that it's behel. A few more words, and then we'll have the full shot of the whole thing.
What's behel? What's behel?
The koyach hatnua. The koyach hatnua in the stone is behel. You see the stone, you don't see the koyach hatnua that carries it. And that's why we come to the conclusion the stone flies on its own. Because we don't see the koyach hatnua. V'chol this entire phenomenon that the stone is flying, which is his hardshus in the stone, and he came about by the koyach hatnua being nislabish. Ultimately, it occurs because shemahos koyach hayad nimsha b'zeh. Mahus koyach hayad, that the reality of the koyach hayad is nimshach, is drawn in this, is put into this.
Why does the Rebbe change now from koyach hatniyah to mahus koyach hayad?
What? Koyach hayad and koyach hatnua, what's it?
Yeah.
Mahus.
His koyach hayad. Different words.
What?
Why doesn't he use koyach hatniyah shebiyad nimshach b'zeh?
He said before, and the reason for that is that's mahus koyach hayad. Koyach hatnua is a chitzonistic movement. Mahus koyach hayad means the reality. The hand moves because the hand has a real capability of movement. Because the hand is made to be able to move. This is what the hand is all about. This is not something novel. That's what a hand is. The koyach hatnua shebiyad is extremely versatile. You can throw a stone and you can draw a beautiful picture. It's all koyach hayad. Mahus koyach hayad. This is mahus koyach hayad. Mahus means the reality of koyach hayad. Okay. The influence of the word mahus koyach hayad is that when the stone flies, it is not that the hand has initiated the flight of the stone. It disturbed its peace and now it's flying its own. No. Flight, movement, originate in the koyach hayad. There's nothing in the stone as far as movement is concerned. The hand has the real capability of the real koyach hayad, the movement. This koyach of movement is being transferred to the stone. Who invented movement? The koyach hayad. The stone is flying now, not on its own, because the koyach hayad gave it a reality of flight. As long as it flies, it is the koyach hayad that's reflected in this flight. If you throw a stone and the stone flies and breaks a window, are you guilty for breaking the window? Or are you saying, no, I just threw the stone flew on its own into the window? So there we say, it's not just it's a direct damage. Not that you only you caused it because you started it. You have created the damage. You broke the window. Because the fact that the stone flew, you carried it all the way to the window. This is why you're guilty. You're not just a grom or just a cause. You are a creator of it. This one, the Rebbe says, 3 lines about it. Mehus koyach hayad. Mehus means the reality of the koyach hayad. Not just the result, the cause of the koyach hayad, but the reality of koyach hayad itself. His nim shabasa is being drawn into the stone. Lochein, and thus, who bibchinas is slapshus mitar hazodik. This is why it is in the condition of hislapshus. Hislapshus means, since you have to take a piece of your own koyach and give it away, that you have to be mislab. You have to focus into it. It doesn't happen inadvertently. Hislapshus mitar hazodik, hana shenitvos baseh. Hana shenitvos baseh means nitvos baseh. The zodik is grasped in this, which means that zodik is identified with it. Again, he's not just a cause, but he's an actual. His capability reflected in this action.
That he is guilty when the stone breaks something.
He's guilty could be that he caused it, but he's not just guilty. He did it. Guilty is one thing, and did it is another thing.
No, why should it be guilt?
Because he caused it. Okay, we're not finished with this, but at least we made a point to say, what is the Rebbe focusing? What is the insist that we should understand here? Why and so forth we'll identify later. But this is how the Rebbe interprets the phenomenon of the stone flying from the human hand. Flight is something which does not exist in the stone per se. The hand has the ability of movement. This ability of movement is being transferred, imbued into the stone. And this is how he continues to fly.
Is he nitfas b'zeh after the stone is already flying?
Nitlas Baza is referring to at the time when it's being initiated. But since it's initiated with his slapshus, so therefore it continues on with the same tfisa. Because we said the koyach hayad is what carries it.
But do we still say while it's flying that he's netfus in the stone which is flying?
Well, looks to.
I understand while he's doing it, he's aiming, but now it's flying. Is he still nitfus?
Yes, because the intent of the flight of the stone was not just the stone should be moved off the ground. Sorry, I can't take any calls right now. Okay. Oh, it's a call from my daughter. Okay.
Was Milov explaining why he's netfus even while it's flying?
Because
Netfus.
the whole phenomenon of flight does not exist in the stone. It exists in the hand, and the hand gives it to the stone.
Okay, but now the hand took over, like to say, I'm not there anymore.
No. The reason the hand took over is because you put yourself into it, it's lapsus. Your intent was that pick up the stone and it should fly, and it should fly all the way over there. And this intent carries it all the way now.
So it's not a repetition of this question.
Excuse me?
A repetition of this question before. What's the difference between koyach hayad and koyach atnua? You said atnua. When you say atnua, you said it was concealed.
All right. Like we say, it's incumbent upon us to explain every nuance in the words and whatever. The difference in koyach atnua and koyach hayad is koyach atnua is the resultant koyach. The hand has many koyachs. The hand is a living entity.
There's infinite koyach.
Infinite koyachs. Koyach atnua is one aspect of the koyach hayad. What aspect of the koyach hayad is engaged in throw? Koyach atnua. Koyach atnua is not a real entity. Koyach atnua is just a functional aspect. What is given to the stone? Not the koyach atnua. The koyach hayad, because that's real. Koyach atnua is just a function of the koyach hayad. What is imbued into the stone? The koyach hayad, the reality of it. That's why here he uses the word koyach hayad. In the form of koyach atnua.
Koyach atnua is a result.
Koyach hayad is a functional aspect. But what can be transferred to the stone is koyach hayad, not the koyach atnua.
That makes him nitfus b'zeh.
Was sagst du?
That makes him nitfus b'zeh. If it's koyach hayad, that makes him that he's nitfus b'zeh.
The nitwas is because of his slapshus. Because it cannot occur unless if you mislavish in it. it is very difficult to fully translate. I said this, we have to use a little bit what the Rebbe says, maybe midaite. When you teach a child Aleph Beis, you can teach Aleph Beis, which is a point, Aleph Beis Gimel Dal. The child was not going to learn that way. The way you teach a child in Aleph Beis is you take the child on your lap and you say, I'm going to show you something, which is very important. How do we take a 3-year-old in the cheder? Do you ever see a 3-year-old come in the cheder? And in you know, achnos of the cheder. Typically, you take an Aleph Beis and you put honey on each letter of the honey of the Aleph Beis. It says, make a bracha and leak itself. This is an Aleph. Now leak this. This is a base. This is how you expose a child to a real thing. If you're going to show it to him, he's not going to learn. He doesn't relate to it. In order to make him relate to it, you have to be mislabish. You have to think at the child's level. How will the child appreciate what an Aleph is? If he has some honey on it, he'll appreciate it. The Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, describes his Melamed, who taught him Aleph Beis. And the Melamed described an Aleph. An Aleph, you know, the Aleph has a Yud on top and a Yud on the bottom and a stick in the middle. So the Melamed described it as a Wasserträger. Wasserträger means a water carrier. Do you ever see a water carrier with a stick, 2 pails on 2 ends? He says, this is the effect of an Aleph. So he says, the Rebbe writes, the effect of that was phenomenal. Every time we saw a Wasserträger, we reminded ourselves of the Aleph.
That's the real power of emotion.
He brought it down to a level, to a child's life level. This is how you teach. Mislabish means mislabish in the mind of the child. And then expose him to it. That's what is slapshus. The same thing when you want to throw a rock. You have to contemplate how can the rock fly and how far will it fly in this way, and you have to be mislabish to judge every step of the way. And if you do not judge, yes, the rock is going to go in somebody's window. No, I didn't intend to. But what do you mean you didn't intend to?
We started the shiur by saying that Ilav Alu is easier to consider than yesh me'ayin. A hand throwing a stone, the stone flying, the cause is the hand throwing. So there's cause and effect. The hand throws, the stone flies.